All right, so I'm super excited that two of my favorite people have come to join me today to have this conversation. We have Erica and we have Edith to join us about an important conversation. And we're gonna get into introductions first. I want you to introduce yourself, Erica and Edith. Tell the people a little bit about who you are and why this conversation is important to you.
My name is Erica. Edith, it's so nice to meet you. Should I thank you for putting this together, this important topic and conversation that we're going to have today to share and help other people. For me, the topic we're going to talk about is very close to my heart, and it speaks to me. I want to share part of my journey and my story with you and with other people in our community to just help in any way that I possibly can, and to know that people, they're not alone.
Hey, I'm Edith. It's good to meet you, Erica. I'm really excited for this conversation. I think that as someone who lived in a household that was majority men, and it was me and my mom and my two brothers and my dad, I think this idea of protectionism is really important to unmask because it lives in all of our bodies, and we're taught to kind of ignore it a little bit and pretend like eyes are not needed to be heard, and narratives aren't important. And so today I think it's important for me to take part in this conversation, and so I'm excited to kind of hear your ideas and imaginations about how this can really take root in our community.
So I've heard you all's individual stories, but I want you to just in this moment talk about the connection between domestic violence and patriarchy.
For patriarchy, it looks like me, or the connection is, I was pretty much forced to stay home and quit my career, and not necessarily understanding how that would feel and how that would look. But as I experienced domestic violence, I didn't realize that I was protecting my husband until I was out of that marriage. I didn't even think about it, but now I can see that. And I have shared my story with a lot of friends and family, and they didn't realize they were doing the exact same thing in their families too.
Erica, you talked about like forced, and I like to bring up like socialization, right? We are taught these messages even without our permission.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
I think for me the connection that I see is that in order to function in patriarchy, you really need to understand a hierarchy. And in a hierarchy, there's typically a superior and inferior, even though they may not be like explicitly saying like I'm the superior, you're the inferior. There are like ways and habits that start to form that cause you to make yourself smaller than needed, to not voice your opinion when you have one for the sake of keeping the peace in the space, right? You're not able to truly call something out for what it is because it's not as
it's so ingrained, right?
It's like something that just like
it's something we do.
Like why is that a problem? Like right now, this is something that I have said that I would like to see, and that you can be able to perform and you can be able to fit this role, so why not, right? Like it's like there is no questioning of your own autonomy or your own desires or the things that you want for yourself.
Yes.
There's this role that is needed for you to play because they are playing the patriarchal role, right? Like they have this idea of I am the protector, I am the leader, I am, and you are now whatever the opposite of that or the complement of that is, right?
I agree with that too. Just staying at home. I love staying home with my children, but then like my finances were taken away from me, and I was made to feel very small. And they even got an allowance, right? And being very isolated because the person I was married to led like a free lifestyle, and I stayed home. And like you said, you become smaller and smaller.
And of course, you should be grateful, right?
Yeah.
That you have the opportunity
Yeah.
to stay at home,
Yes.
be with your children, and that, and in itself, that's a wonderful thing. But when there's a power dynamic that's included,
Yeah.
then that's when kind of patriarchy rears its head. What does protectionism look like? Even like feel like or sound like?
For me, protectionism looks like, you know, in the community, you're smaller, so you don't even understand what's happening, but wanting to protect that outward appearance and not wanting to be like fail in your community. I volunteered at school when I was at home and not wanting anyone to really know what's going on, to keeping up that, you know, white picket fence mentality, and not wanting your relatives and your family and friends to really know what's going on. And then when things come to the surface, then no one believes you. But even if you're not being physically abused, there's still other ways. But you still want to protect your family.
The family
You
unit,
keep the
right?
family unit together, because there's that role
Right.
that you're expected to play.
I think for me, protectionism looks like, similar to you, silence, right? It looks like not voicing your real opinions and your real observations of and reflections of a space, and really starving that space of your presence, right? Like it asks for dismiss your intuition, right? It asks you to dismiss a lot of yourself in order to keep the peace. Or it is a minimizing of yourself, right? It's a and it also looks like, keeping kind of like a status quo, right? So, this is what I was thinking. Like, it feels like in personal dynamics, right? Like, say someone is openly misogynistic, or like there's a sexist comment that is made, right? And someone blows up, right? Let's say a femme body is clearly irritated because that was an offensive statement that was said. However, as someone that, you know, is socialized and conditioned to always want to be the median, right? To want to keep the space, even though you can recognize like what was said was wrong, right? There is this understanding of like you need to still be the acceptable relatable person. So
I think that it's a perfect segue into kind of the next question around like what are the unintended consequences of women, us, taking on this role of protectionism?
Kids that are watching us,
Right,
like
yeah.
the young kids that are watching these interactions happen, and they, you know, because there's you know energetic interactions that we all exchange at all times, even before we talk to each other. There's the way that we feel. So if you know someone doesn't speak up, or you know someone doesn't like you know curb an energy as it rears itself, it then normalizes that it's supposed to be here. It then normalizes that you are supposed to be okay with belittling and minimizing and a stripping of your power and your dignity and your right to take up space, right? Like it's something that is it's then very detrimental. That causes so many like health problems in people, right? Like but yeah, that's some unintended consequences is that it then is normalized. It's then it continues to ingrain itself that it is normal for us to function this way, for us to accept that someone will be small and someone will be big in a sense, right? Like that dichotomy will forever continue to replicate itself if, you know, the way that, you know, we talk about protectionism, the way we talk about misogyny, the way we talk about all of these isms, right? If we don't really bring a real kind of heartfelt reflection to it, right? Like a self-interrogation of like, how do I uphold this in my life? Like, what do I let go and let slide that I've seen someone else blow up at, and I didn't give them the chance for that reaction to be given any real weight, right? It was just blown off as like, oh, that's just someone overreacting. Like, why are they overreacting? What is an overreaction, right? Like, what was that trigger? And how am I adding to that fire to continue to have it? Because it doesn't feel good when I see someone get labeled as the angry or irrational person, right? Because in some way that reaction is a reflection of of the culture that we have,
Yeah.
right? Like that person having that moment of disarray within their body, and then everybody just watching, right? Everybody just sitting back and being a bystander. That's a moment where we're accepting that, like, it is okay for some offenses to go by because they're not that, like, I didn't hurt you.
I think it connects to this idea, the saying around, you never know the private battles people are facing.
Exactly.
Right? And so it could look like anger, it could look like lashing out, right? I think it's a privilege, really, to have people after you've gone through an experience that can validate like how you feel and what you went through, because we all know that that is a privilege that everyone isn't afforded. And so I thank you for bringing that up, because I want this to become a space where we also understand the privileges that, even though as we go through hard things, that we have as opposed to other folks in our community. And so I just want to get clearer about, like, what does protectionism, like, what does it look like and feel like, and then what are the consequences, the very real consequences of when we choose to protect the people that bring us harm.
Just wanted to touch base on what it feels like for me. It feels like the protectionism is like that slow drip, 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 where you're like, I can fix this. I'm expected to fix this, and I can fix this. And a little drip from a faucet it's okay, I can manage that. But then it keeps dripping, and all of a sudden you're up to your feet in water, but you can still get through it and do what you need to do. No one's really gonna notice that.
There's a mop for that.
There's a mop, I got
Right?
this. And then you're up to your knees and to your waist and getting washed away from.
And you realize you can't swim.
You're isolated,
Right?
You're out in an ocean being isolated, away from all your family and friends, and just not letting anyone see that. And then you're drowning. How are you going to get back to you and not to feel small in the ocean, but to get to land and feel big and build again? And for me, it sounds like there's voices in my head telling me that I'm crazy, but the other person, the abuser, gaslighting you, and you feel like you're the crazy one, you're the angry one.
What were the consequences of you protecting?
Consequences of me protecting were being able to go back out in society. I was financially cut off and wasn't able to go to Target even and get shoes for my children or food for my baby. The person I was with, again, how I talked about the allowance, cut me off and said, write a list and I'll go get things. So being a stay-at-home mom, and then not being able to go get my baby food, and even putting lists on the list things that I needed, like essential items I needed, and then him not getting them. Makes you feel really worthless. Yeah, so knowing what it's like to go out in society, the first time that I went out to Target by myself, I cried. I just cried. Like, I'm here being able to provide for myself and my kids now.
Yeah. Like, what's your advice? Like, because at some point, it's a process, right? We will decide to choose ourselves. It's imperative that we choose ourselves, right? What's your advice to anyone listening about choosing themselves?
Yeah.
Why is it important to choose yourself?
It's difficult to choose yourself, right? When you're in an environment that doesn't let you choose yourself. My advice would be to find a trusted circle that you can connect with. But then also, as I shared my story and what I was going through, other people reached out to me, men and women, that were experiencing domestic violence and going through the same things that I were. And they said, because you shared your story and your strength is showing through, I'm strong now too, and I know I can do this. Trust your intuition. Like, if something is not feeling good in your heart or your mind, in your spirit and your essence, then you get to choose yourself, even if family and friends and children are mad at you, you just be strong, just keep moving forward.
Agree, finding a trusted confidant to be able to share as much as you're comfortable sharing, and to keep those lines of communication open for sure. Think about moments that I experienced in just small moments. It doesn't have to be like a big thing, but like sitting down and really fleshing out what I feel about the situation, because I have a hard time sometimes really identifying what it is that I feel, not what it is I think I feel, right? Like those are two distinctions that like you want to really get to the core of what it is that you are feeling, not what it is you've been conditioned to think about the scenario you're experiencing, right? Yeah, sometimes butterflies aren't butterflies.
Right.
That's so true.
Yeah, sometimes that's your gut being like, the heck out here. So learn as much as you can, honestly, about the different ways that you've been taught to not choose yourself. Like, in what ways do you self-sacrifice when you don't have to? Really sit with yourself and figure out what ways are you overextending yourself that you don't need to be. Because it's in those areas that you can start to draw back your power. You can be like, I actually don't need to expend 15 minutes for this. I can use that back to over here. I don't know what I'm going to use it for yet, but I don't need to do that. That's what I know, right?
I'm so glad that you brought up journaling, because that just helped me to remember that I journal a lot too. And now when I go back to my journals, I can't believe certain things happened. You know, I think you kind of block it out. One thing I wanted to share with both of you too is I realized actually last year, extreme independence really can look like a trauma response, because you've done it alone for so long, and it's really a traumatic response to what you've experienced, to the kind of abuse that you've experienced. Yeah.
The why is working to illuminate these issues, right? Protecting patriarchy is a nuanced conversation, right? But it's an integral part of the conversation around domestic violence, that we as human beings, not just man and woman, not just black or white, that we should strive to eradicate so that other folks do not experience what you all have experienced. So thank you, much gratitude for both of you. You all are special people to me, and so thank you, thank you, thank you.